Hello, hello. My name is Jeanette, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about the disappearance of Summer Wells, who is a 5-year-old girl from Beech Creek, Tennessee. So Summer Wells lived in a rural area with her mother, Candus Bly, or Candus Wells, I've seen it reported as both, her father, Don Wells, as well as 3 brothers and her grandma, also named Candus. And her grandma lived on the property. They lived on an 11-acre property, which if you're not really familiar with like acreage, 11 acres is a pretty substantial piece of property. And they lived in like out in the middle of nowhere, basically. So like there's no cell service. If you've ever been out like where you're driving through the country and you're on the phone and you're like, all right, I'm going to drop you here in a second, because you just know you're way out there. So they lived out there. They were also kind of like what you might call country people. They lived, I don't want to say that they were like dirty, but they were definitely messy people. The pictures of their home just show a lot of chaos, but with 4 kids, that happens. Summer ended up going missing, and it's still unsolved, and there's been a lot of speculation about if her family was involved or what could have happened, who could have taken her, because it's just way out there. So I'm going to start with kind of happened on the day of she went missing. So at 6 a.m. on the morning of June 15th, Don Wells woke up to go to work. He saw Summer was laying in bed and like slept in the bed with him and Candus, and so he gets up, gets ready for work, and that's the last time he sees her. So then at 7 a.m. he leaves. So then Candus wakes up, gets Summer up, and they have to go bring her mother, Candus, Grandma Candus, to a doctor's appointment. They all get in the car. They go at like 8 o'clock, I guess it would end up being then, or a little after, to go bring Grandma to a doctor's appointment. And then they get there, drop her off, say bye, peace, and then call us when you're done. So they go and they're sitting in the car and just hanging out, listening to the radio or whatever while they're waiting for Grandma to be done with her appointment. So at that point, they get a call. Candus gets a call from the son of a friend who's this 15-year-old kid, Hunter, and he's like, what's going on? Now, Hunter is close with Candus, I guess, supposedly, because his mom and Candus, the mother Candus, were like best friends. So they had a falling out because something had happened with like CPS being called on one of them. If you know the specifics, please comment down below, because I'm definitely probably going to have to do another video about this, because this is a pretty intense case, and I haven't even watched like all the interviews. There's so many interviews that this family has done. She answers, and he's like, what are you guys doing? Can you come pick me up? I'm bored. 15-year-old kid in the middle of nowhere, So she's like, all right, if it's cool with your mom, we'll come get you. The mom says, yeah, they can stop by. They can hang for a little bit. So while they're waiting for Grandma, they go over to Hunter's house to pick him up, and they're there, hang out for a little bit, and then they get a call from Grandma. And so Hunter's like, well, can I go with you guys? They had some errands to run. So they all pile into the car. Hunter's mom says, yeah, that's cool. Go with them. She's probably like, yes, please go. So they roll, they go pick up Grandma, and then they have a bunch of other errands to do. They have to drop off a prescription at Walgreens. They drop off the prescription, and then they decide to go to like a water hole to go swimming, and like kind of like just like they pulled off the road, and there was like trees and stuff, and you get in, jump in. So Candus and Grandma are just watching the kids do their swimming thing, and Summer was already wearing a bathing suit, so she was already prepped for that. Maybe, it's the summer, so they're like, she's probably like, can we go swimming? So when the prescription they believe is ready, they go to get the prescription, and then they go to the store. They stop at a store to like get groceries, and then they go to a Sonic to get food. And then they dropped Hunter off at that point, I believe. Again, if I'm wrong about anything, please comment down below, and I will update it in the next video I do about this, because I know there's just going to be more information. I'm just kind of learning about this case right now, and there's a lot of information. All right, so after they dropped Hunter off, there was a video taken of Summer in the back seat of the car sleeping on some milk jugs. The mom had wanted to get a picture of her, like she was sleeping up with her arm up the same way her dad sleeps. And so people have analyzed it, and they say that this is it looks like she's awake, alive, like she's not blue or anything like that. So then they go home, they get home, and Summer and her grandma and her mom are planting flowers out in the yard, about 20 feet away from the house, she said. And so after they were done planting the flowers, Summer is going to go inside. They go inside, they rinse their hands off, wash their hands, and she's going to go play in the basement. So she tells her brothers, I'm going to go, they have like a playroom in the basement. She's going to go in the playroom in the basement and go play with her toys. And so the brothers are like, yeah, whatever, go. Great. And the mom goes outside. I think that she was at that point going to bring like the groceries in now, or she went to talk to her mom or something. So she goes outside and comes back in, like she says 2 minutes later, and Summer is nowhere to be seen. She's not in the basement. She calls down to her. And so her mom said that Summer always answered. She was a good little girl. She would come. She wouldn't wander off. And so she was really disturbed when she couldn't find Summer that day. At this point, Candus calls Dawn, obviously in a panic. She can't find her daughter. And Dawn's immediately reaction is, okay, I'll be home immediately. We're going to go find our kid. So Candus starts searching the property. She kind of goes to look where Summer could have been. But as I said, Summer wasn't the kind of kid who would just wander off. The mom goes over to the grandma's house and uses the landline to call 911 at this point, because they've kind of exhausted all the areas where the kid could be, Summer could be. So at this point, they call 911. The father's on the way home. But then the mom hops in the dad's other truck, and they have like another vehicle, and goes like up the mountain to go look for Summer in the event that she had wandered off, or if someone had taken her, which the father claims the whole time, like, I knew she was going to get taken. I knew from the get-go that she didn't just wander off. At 6:30 p.m., Summer was reported missing to the Hawkins County Sheriff, as I said, and then around midnight, they turned that into an endangered child alert, which means that there's a missing child, but it doesn't appear that she was like taken or snatched. And then that was soon after turned into an Amber Alert, which is like be on the lookout for this little girl. And they released a description and everything. So they said that she was 3 feet tall, maybe 50 pounds, and she was wearing a pink shirt and gray bottoms when she went missing. So on June 16th, the following day, the first press conference of many is held, and there wasn't a lot of information to go on because there was an extensive search being conducted, and the terrain was just steep, dangerous. The search crews were trekking them, but the idea that they were like trekking through this terrain that was just almost impossible to like traverse. Why would a 5-year-old do that? And another thing is, so the parents said that they always warned their kids, don't go out in the woods. There's bears, there's wild dogs, there's wild cats, there's all kinds of predators. And then there's obviously, you could fall, you could hurt yourself. Just make sure you always go with somebody if you're going to go somewhere. The search crews also, there's no cell phone service, as I said, out there. So basically they're trying to communicate with one another, and the search just was like pretty slow going, and they didn't have any leads, didn't have any tips right off the bat. During the first week, though, they received over 200 tips, but none of those were fruitful. This case kind of seems like a typical missing child case when you kind of look at all those facts of the matter, but not that any missing child case is typical, but there were a lot of circumstances in this case that just kept coming out that made it pretty clear that this was not a typical case and that there were some weird circumstances. So the family did a lot of interviews, and they're still doing interviews, a lot more than almost any crime I can think of in recent years or whatever. So the family did interviews in the immediate aftermath, and one of the things that everybody caught, obviously, is that they were talking about her in the past tense as though she was already dead and gone, and that's not a good sign. Obviously, that's what they're going to look for, little investigators and stuff, and the first people they're going to look at are the family. Something that struck me, when I first heard about this, something that struck me was that Summer's head was shaved. This is something that the family addressed, and they stated that it was something that Summer had wanted to do. So the mother specifically, Candus, stated that Summer had wanted to get her hair cut like Candus because Candus had cut it short and her brothers also had short hair, and that Summer was a tomboy and that she wanted to look like her brothers and her mom. Which is fine. There's nothing against tomboys. But then Don, the father, says that Summer shaved her own head, like part of her head in the back or something, and it looked weird. So then Candus shaved her head so that Summer wouldn't feel bad, which there's a lot of stories that just don't add up. And it really seems like the family is sad and they're not maybe involved in this. They passed lie detector tests, so it's hard to say. Like, I'm kind of torn. Please comment below and let me know what you guys think. And please like and subscribe because I'm probably going to do another video about this as well. One thing that struck me about the shaved heads is that sometimes if there's lice or scabies or something like that, that's really hard to get rid of, people will shave their heads, a la Meredith Palmer in The Office. Just to, get rid of what the lice is living in, and then you scrub your hair and you're good. But they claimed that it was just, that she wanted her hair short. So the parents seem very distraught, sincerely. And as I said, they passed lie detector tests as well as the grandma. So I believe the investigators know what they're doing. But, this has been 3 months on and it's still unsolved. Summer is still missing, obviously. So there's probably going to be more coming out. He's still doing interviews. I mean, every week there's interviews from Don Wells, and Candus hasn't really come out and said a lot because they're obviously going through a lot. No matter how the daughter went missing or, whatever happened to her, she's gone. So that's got to be upsetting. So then it started coming out that Don Wells, the father, had a spotty history, and he had been arrested the year before, not even a year before, on October 14th of 2020. Donald Wells was arrested for assault against Candus. So what had happened was Candus was at home and Don had gone to Utah to work, do a different job that paid better, I guess. So he goes off and he's there. Candus and he had kind of separated and were fighting. And so he goes off and he's working out in Utah. So at the same time, in the home, Candus has another guy living there. This guy, apparently Jose, is living in the home with Candus and their 4 kids, which... that's not cool. All right. He's there, and then Don is not happy about that, obviously. So he ends up coming back to Tennessee after a period of time, and because he wanted to reconcile with Candus. And he goes he's waiting at the home, and they come home, this new guy, Jose, and Candus. And they get into it, obviously. Her new lover's there. And he is a drinker. Don is a drinker. And at that point, there's a dispute about what happened, but at that point things got real and there was allegations that a handgun was pulled out during this event. So when he arrived at the home, he had been drinking already. So he obviously had been driving drunk. He obviously didn't have an issue with that. So that kind of says something about his character. He also has a history of violence. There's some talk about, so he has other kids from a prior relationship or prior relationships. And there are some allegations of stuff that was not right that went on with them, but that's for another time. At that point, he assaults Candus, and she ends up getting an order of protection against him. If you've ever tried to get an order of protection against a significant other, something pretty serious has to happen. Like, it's not just that you don't do this softly and lightly, like, oh, I'm just gonna call the police and get you arrested. No, something serious has to happen. So in the order of protection, Candus stated, and if I can find the picture, I'll put it up, but she writes it out. He drinks and throws things. I am afraid of being hurt. He is abusive physically and mentally toward me. I am afraid for my children and myself. My mother fears he is going to hurt her. So in one of the interviews I did see with WJHL, which is a local Tennessee station, Don claims that it's behind them and that's something that happened and that they're over, which kind of sounds like what an abusive person would say about that sort of situation. Then he says in a real gaslighty kind of way that they worked it out and Candus apologized to him, which that just doesn't sit right with me. I don't like the way he says that. So, and during that incident, he was charged with unlawful possession of a handgun. So he says that it was just in the glove compartment of his car. I don't know what to believe, honestly. Since this happened, there have been a lot of tips. Over 1,000 tips have come in, and they really haven't named anybody as a person of interest, anybody as a suspect. They don't really have a lot that they're going on. What we do know is that the other 3 boys were removed from the home. And by Don Wells' own admission, it is because he has had an issue with the fact that Summer's missing, as I can understand, and that he's got a drinking issue that becomes violent and he has drunken outbursts sometimes, which is not optimal for somebody whose daughter just went missing. So another thing is, on multiple occasions, Don has stated that he thinks that she was abducted, which is just very oddly specific for someone whose kid went missing. I would be open to all kinds of things, all kinds of situations. I wouldn't just say, oh, well, she obviously was abducted. They're way out in the country. You would have to go through all these winding roads. If she was abducted, it's probably by somebody who knows the family, because who would know that there's a little girl there who's in the house? They said that she wouldn't have wandered off, so obviously they're implying that somebody came into the house and took her, or came out of the property and took her, which means that they would have had to know that the kid would be there even. So another thing is weird is that the father has stated that they think that she's dead. They don't think that she's alive. They think that they'll see her in the, quote, in the resurrection. And they refuse to believe that anything else happened to her. So there's that. That's kind of not the best. Another thing. Don also stated that he doesn't really think the person who did this should go to prison. He thinks that the person who did this, prison is a bad place. He says he's been there and he doesn't think anybody should have to go to prison. All right. Just going to leave that there. So as I said, I still have a lot more research to do on this. Again, if you have any more knowledge about any more of the suspicious stuff that went on, I do have a little bit more knowledge, but there's a lot of information out there. So please comment below and make sure to like and subscribe so you can see my next video. And I will definitely tag people in the video when you provide me information, if I end up using your information, because that's the right thing to do. So another thing, Summer Wells' mom has a missing sister who's been missing since August 21st, 2009. She just went missing. Rose Marie Bly went missing without a trace on August 21st, 2009. She was 21 years old and she was leaving her home in St. Croix Falls, Wisconsin, and she was on her way to Cushing, which is 5 miles away. So I don't know, assuming that's a 10-minute drive maybe, if you got traffic. Her car was inevitably found in Grantsburg, which is 30 miles in a different direction, in a tractor-trailer lot that truckers used. That's very suspicious. Not that there's anything related in this, but I mean, it's something worth noting. So the investigation team behind this case right now is the TBI, which is the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. And they have stated on multiple occasions that Summer Wells' family has been very cooperative, that they have passed lie detector tests, that they really don't have any reason at this point to list them as suspects or as persons of interest in this case. Obviously, I'm sure the investigators have some knowledge that isn't being shared. Most likely, in most cases, that's the case. Hopefully, at least for Summer's family's sake, that they do have some kind of tips or something that's they're working on right now. So I know the family was having a very hard time and they were very distraught, and the brothers also appeared to be distraught. So that is another, some people had said maybe the brothers had done something, maybe they had hurt her and that the family had been covering this up. But from what investigators have stated, it doesn't seem like the brothers, the story has stayed the same, essentially. So one tip that was considered big was that a truck was reported to be seen in the area around the time that Summer went missing. And it was described as a 1998 to 2000 year red Toyota Tacoma with a full bed ladder rack with white buckets in the truck bed. So to date, that truck and the driver have never been found or identified. And they are just way out in the middle of nowhere. So the likelihood that this is someone just passing through that would never have even heard of this case is kind of unlikely. Obviously, we want to get Summer's face out there. We want to get the story out there. And we also want to keep this in the minds of investigators and in the minds of the public so that we can keep this case open and moving and it doesn't go cold completely. So what do you think? Where do you think Summer is? Who do you think took her? Where do you think she could be? Do you think she's dead? Do you think she's alive? I want to hear everybody's opinions. I want to hear what everybody thinks. And make sure to like and subscribe so that you do see my next video, because I'm pretty sure there will be another one of these on this case. All right. So thank you everybody for watching. This is basically where I'm going to wrap this one up, and stay tuned for my next video. Thank you. Bye.